Next up, we have Atico Mining, and it's going to be Fernando Ganoza, CEO of the company, presenting, and copper producer in Colombia with an interesting asset also in Ecuador, going through the study stages. And Fernando, looking forward to having you here on stage. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for making the trip. It is good to see you, my friend. I've actually been to the mine in Colombia, so yeah, you go up here, and your microphone is on, and
Is it on?
Go ahead. Yeah, I'll turn it on.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Fernando Ganoza. I'm the CEO of Atico Mining Corporation. So Atico was founded by the same group that started Fortuna Silver Mines back in 2004. It's a group of mine developers and operators. And they formed Atico with a clear mandate to become a mid-tier producer in the copper and gold space, following the same business model as Fortuna Silver Mines. So we have two assets. One in Colombia, it's a high-grade copper and gold VMS, has been in production over 30 years. We acquired it in late 2013. And the neat thing about this project is that it's a VMS surrounded by a large land package that is underexplored. And we've been exploring it for the past 5 years. We think there's good potential to find other VMSs around it. And we also have a development project in Ecuador. It's also a high-grade VMS. It's in development stage. We're working through the permitting and the feasibility study. And we get more into the details of the projects as we move along the presentation. A little bit on the corporate side of Atico. We have 121 million shares outstanding, no warrants. We have a strong balance sheet as we're a producing company. We're generating cash. We have over 24 million in working capital, about 10 million in current cash, and available credit lines from local Colombian banks. As management and directors, we are still the single largest shareholder of the company. So when we make decisions, we have our shareholder cap on, which I think is a big differentiator for us. So diving into the details of El Roble mine. El Roble, as I mentioned, has been in production for over 30 years. We acquired it in late 2013. It was kind of an artisanal mine. We transformed it into a 1,000-ton per day underground operation with very high standards and very good cash flow. It's a clean copper and gold concentrate that we are shipping to China. And it has a very competitive cash cost for an underground operation, for a 1,000-ton per day operation. And that's because it's high-grade nature. So that really helps a lot and differentiates the operation. Some numbers for the last 4 quarters in terms of cash flow from operations and free cash flow. Even though the price dipped in the second half of this year, we're still generating good cash flow. And we have between 2.5 and 3 years of reserves. And keep in mind that this is a VMS. So its history is that as we have been mining, we have been exploring underground. We are replacing what we mine. We're finding more resources. And that's one of the opportunities at this project. What you see here is a long section of the El Roble mine. It's not clear on this slide, but you can see a plunge following mineralization from the top right hand of the slide down to the left hand side. And we're following these mineralized pods down at depth following this plunge. And what has happened is that once we got to the bottom of that large pod that we're currently mining, we saw a system of faults that have displaced mineralization. We're trying to figure out where that mineralization has been displaced, but we think there's a good chance that mineralization will still be there. And the reason being is that VMSs are very zoned. We're still mining in the high copper, high gold zone of the VMS, which is basically metals that precipitate faster when the VMS is being formed. So it should be more closer to the feeder, more closer to the center. This is a tilted VMS. It's subvertical. So as we move deeper, following mineralization, we should see a transition into other metals, for instance, zinc and barium, that will indicate we're getting to the edge of the deposit. We still haven't seen that. So we believe there's a good opportunity to still follow mineralization at depth. The challenge for us now is, of course, figure out where it has been moved through this system of faults. So the other opportunity that we have is in the large land package. This is a map of the claims. We have over 6,000 hectares surrounding El Roble mine. El Roble mine is more or less at the center of those 6,000 hectares. What you see here is the geology. The green color, it's a basalt formation that for 10 kilometers flows through the property. And the contact of sedimentary and basalt is where El Roble mine is happening. And we ran a geochemical sampling, geophysical surveying, and detailed mapping program for several years around this favorable geological formation. And what we found was over 20 targets where we think it's worthwhile drill testing. So there's been a lot of work done in this property. It was underexplored before we got there, so we're just learning about the geology of this area. And what we're seeing is a lot of good indicators that there is activity in the area that will make it prospective for other VMS deposits to happen. For instance, down at anomaly 8, so about 1.5 kilometers below El Roble to the south, we are right now drilling below an outcrop of massive sulfide that yielded over 30% copper, so pure chalcopyrite, basically. And we ran a geochemical sampling program around it, a geophysical survey, and we're now drilling below it, trying to figure out if that outcrop belongs to a larger massive sulfide at depth. So we're still finding new things at this property. So we not only have the operating mine that's funding all of this exploration, we have the exploration excitement, if you will, in this property that by the day, as we're finding more things, it's looking more interesting to us. So moving to La Plata in Ecuador, as I mentioned, is another VMS. It's in a good place. It's about 2 hours away from Quito, the capital city of Ecuador, so it has good infrastructure. It's also going to be an underground mine. You can see here the two blocks that form the 2 million tons of La Plata. It's more polymetallic in nature. You can see the different metals and their grade. But all in all, as a gold equivalent, to give a sense of the high-grade nature of the deposit, it's close to 13 grams per ton. Now, those 2 million tons that we're drilling currently to migrate from inferred to measure and indicated as part of the feasibility study, we believe from what we're seeing right now that there's a lot of opportunity to find at the mine to increase the resource. We're seeing a lot of indicators that those 2 million tons are not the only tons that we're going to find there. As developers and operators, our preference, our choice is not to spend years exploring the VMS, but to, with what we have, put it in operation, and as you mine it, it's going to be easier to drill at depth from underground to find more resources. Now, this is a map of the claims surrounding La Plata deposit. And it's a similar setting to El Roble. It's a very prospective land package surrounding a VMS. The difference is that this is not underexplored. This has been explored in the past, and there is good indications that there are VMS occurrences beyond La Plata deposit. So what we're doing right now is we are following through on these discoveries and occurrences of massive sulfide beyond La Plata mine. We think there's a good opportunity that there might be a discovery beyond La Plata in this area. So it has been explored in the past, but no new exploration has been done for the past 15 years. So there are new things that we can do that we have learned at El Roble that we can apply here that we think are going to possibly yield results. So as an operating mine and as an operating group, for us, the relationship with the community is key. That is the basis for us as a sustainable mining business, so we devote a lot of effort and time. We are happy to say that at El Roble, the community considers us a valuable neighbor, and we're working to get to that same point at La Plata. And I'll leave you with this slide. We are a group of people that have a background in mining, that has with a track record of successful building and operating mines and creating value for shareholders. I started Fortuna Silver Mines with my brothers back in 2004. And at some point, we decided to split the family. I still don't know if I got the short or the long stick. We'll see. My father and I went to form this new venture, Atico Mining, and basically emulate what we did with Fortuna now in the copper and gold space. So thank you very much for your attention. I'll open up for questions now.
Fantastic. Right on the dot, 12 minutes. I really appreciate it. Fernando, great presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before I ask a couple of questions, do we have any questions from the audience for Fernando? Yeah. Fernando, I was thinking like development budget as well. You said you have 24 million, 25 million in working capital. What is sort of the plan for now 2023 on exploration and maybe development of La Plata?
So exploration overall between the two projects is about a budget of about 6 million. And development of La Plata at this stage with the feasibility study and the permitting is another 7 million.
Okay, perfect, straightforward. On the exploration side, you have 2.5 years mine life, right, at El Roble. It's like, what was it? I know you sort of hinted at it. It's like you will always be able to, or not always, like it's a, but
so far so
you
good.
have been able to replace it so far. What is some of the feedback you get also from the analyst community? Because I know, like, looking at it, they usually ask 5 to 7, maybe even 10 years mine life. And when the analysts look at it, like, what's some of the feedback and how do they value that?
I think it's a challenge for analysts, right? Underground, I'm Peruvian. I have an operating background in Peru. And in Peru, usually underground mines won't have a reserve ahead of 2 or 3 years, right? That's basically how they operate. They've been operating for 30 years. And, well, there's an economic reason for that. Capital markets are different. People expect you to have reserves for much longer time. That means you need to deploy much more capital to get there and takes more time. Now, that's particularly challenged, especially in a VMS. VMSs can be tricky. In the early years, we were lucky because mineralization followed this very simple pattern down the plunge. But now we found our first challenge. There's a system of very complex faults, and we're trying to figure out where mineralization was moved. We are very optimistic that the rest of the deposit is there. The question for us is, how big is the missing portion? Is still the largest portion? Is not much left. We don't know. That's yet to be determined. But we're very optimistic it's there. For us, it's just about finding it. We're working hard to find it. And once we do, we hope that we can then go back to the 5-6 years of life of mine that we were maintaining prior to this.
Okay. Since we have 30 seconds, on a scale of 1 to 10, how opportunistic are you in this current environment, taking opportunity of the very low valuations? Very much so. We're actually working on 2 opportunities right now. One we are very bullish on. We think it's the right time, in particular in the copper space, to take advantage of opportunities. So yes. Fantastic. Fernando, great presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kyle.
And thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And